man, when I'm watching that tape, those guys were doing a great job of building a pocket, setting edges, and allowing D Winters and Fred Warner to just be guided missiles and do what they want. Like that, those two guys were the best players on the field. And a lot of it was because I thought the defensive line did a really good job of being assignment sound and eating up blockers to allow those guys to kind of run free. The cornerbacks, I thought played really well. They were excellent in the run game, which a year ago was a small I think you and I talked about this last time I was on. It was a small thing that people didn't talk about, but it was lacking. Like they didn't have those guys who were willing to stick their nose out in there as much out on the edges.
That is ESPN 49ers reporter Nick Wagner, who is fantastic. The conversation with Nick is coming up. This video is brought to you by our friends, mine and yours, Puesto Mexicano Moderno, fantastic Mexican food. They have 2 locations in Levi Stadium. So week 3 against the Cardinals, that's where you're going to eat pregame or during the game. But you don't have to wait. They got 2 locations in the Bay Area, Concord and Santa Clara, and they have locations in Southern California. So if you're in Orange County or near La Jolla, go see Puesto. Fantastic tacos. Fantastic. And it's like the good stuff. Plus they're Niner fans. And phenomenal margaritas. So thank you, Puesto, for sponsoring this video. We got a lot to talk about with Nick Wagner. Short rib quesadilla taco, my favorite, by the way. Filet mignon, so good. Here we go. Let's get to it. Where are you at with the injury part of Brock Purdy right now?
Yeah, so let's go back a little bit. First of all, the shoulder thing, you could kind of see it happen when it happened. He kind of got driven. It was in the first half. He took a big hit and he was driven into the ground, like directly on his left shoulder. Now, the good news is obviously that's not his throwing shoulder, but as you still got to be able to torque your body and turn and all the things he needs to do to throw and things like that. Kyle Shanahan said on Monday that the bigger concern was the toe. He was asked directly if it was turf toe. Shanahan said he didn't know. My impression is that it was something at least similar to turf toe, which for people who don't know, it's like a sprained toe, essentially. And the problem here, Guy, is that if it is turf toe, they're playing on turf again this week in New Orleans. Arguably, maybe the worst turf in the league, at least up there amongst the worst. So I think that's all things that have to be taken into consideration as they go on throughout the week. Now, with that being said, I still didn't get the impression Kyle Shanahan was super concerned, at least not yet. He kept making reference to the next 24 hours being important. So, I guess we'll kind of wait and see where Purdy is on Wednesday in that regard. But definitely not great, not what you want. And again, one of these injuries that pops up the next day. And that happens everywhere. I know people think it only happens in San Francisco. It does happen everywhere, but it seems like with the Niners, it seems to happen to guys who matter a lot more maybe than in other places. And when you already have George Kittle down and Juwan Jennings down and adding Brock Purdy to the mix, I certainly understand why fans would wake up with a feeling today of here we go again.
And it's not you're not playing the Seahawks defensive line this coming week. I think when you look back at this week 1 game against Seattle, Brock's legs were a huge factor. Next gen stats, 60.5% of his dropbacks, he faced pressure. It's the highest pressure rate he's had in his career. The left side of the 49ers line accumulated 17 of 23 pressures allowed. Trent Williams allowed 10 of 38 pressures. Ben Barch gave up 7 pressures on 38 pass blocks. So Brock Purdy's legs were a huge part of week 1. And, I do think you have to give some credit to Seattle's defensive front. Like those guys are excellent.
Yep.
But it does create an immediate, okay, how is this offensive line? Brock had to run around. Can Mac Jones move like Brock can behind this offensive line if it's the same story? And the answer is no.
Right? The answer is no. To me, Guy, the concern here beyond the offensive line, and I'm not saying that they are not culpable for their part of that, those stats that you just read off, that there was just not a lot of receiver separation. I mean, if you go back and watch it, Ricky Pearsall was creating some separation. Juwan Jennings, before he got hurt, a couple of times, but that's really not his game anyway. He's more of a contested catch guy. Brock Purdy didn't target any other receivers. Not that they didn't have any other catches. They weren't targeted. So Russell Gage, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, this is all explanations for why Kendrick Bourne was signed, and obviously George Kittle was supposed to be a big part of the game plan. They didn't have him for most of the game as well. So I think it all factors together, and I need to go and look and see what the stat was on how long Brock Purdy was holding the ball. But I think it's all married together, right? There is pressure. Brock Purdy escapes. Can a guy shake loose after that? The flip side of that being, can guys get open? Not necessarily, and then pressure comes because the offensive line can't protect for 5 seconds, right? So it all ties together. But yeah, to your point, if it is Mac Jones, Mac Jones made the joke in training camp, like what he's calling himself Forrest Gump or something like that, or he said, "I'm not Forrest Gump." I can't remember exactly what it was, but he was joking about running around in a preseason game in practice. But definitely not as big a part of his game as Brock Purdy, who himself doesn't think of himself as a dual threat quarterback. He's definitely mobile enough to create time and find opportunities to make plays like he did on the pass to Tungus to win the game. So a lot to be concerned about there. Also, you make a good point that Seattle's defense, I think, is quite good, particularly their defensive line. I don't think the Saints are working with that same kind of personnel.
No, but you are going to a loud place again. And no, I think there were a lot of Niner fans the other day. They'll probably be even a little more this week. Brock was 2.97 seconds time to throw, which is slow.
Slow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. That's up there.
That's long. And we know Brock doesn't want to be that way. And Kyle doesn't want his offense to be that way. I did think, let's do the week one, you paid the quarterback a lot of money review, though. How did you think Brock played? I mean, I had people asking me, because a couple years ago I did GFF, which is like PFF, except it's just me grading Darnold and Lance throws in practice.
I trust your grades better. I don't know what colors you use to describe them, but I trust your grades more.
Well, I learned the PFF system. Josh Duval taught me the PFF system because I wanted it to kind of line up. And,
sure.
I thought that the touchdown he threw to Jake Tonjes, I don't know. I don't know if you can check PFF directly. My guess is they graded that a negative 0.5 throw. That'd be my guess.
Probably. Yeah.
Now I think he made a throw to Pearsall that, it's a plus 1.5, which you only get, even the best quarterbacks in the league get like 2 of those a game, right?
Right.
Like 38 to 40 in a year. What'd you think of the way Brock played?
I thought he was okay. I think there's a lot of ways, there's a lot of layers to the Brock Purdy discussion from that game, just because of the things that I was just making reference to. Like, there's this dynamic where when Brock Purdy has all of his weapons and he does well, people don't want to give him credit, right? But then when the opposite happens and he doesn't have his guys and doesn't have guys, Jake Tonjes, who had 0 career catches, was probably by the end of that game, at least amongst receivers and tight ends, the guy who had the most experience playing with Brock Purdy on the whole roster of guys who were available. If you really think about it, you could argue for Pearsall, but Pearsall missed most of camp last year. Tonjes was on the practice squad the year before. But that just tells you, Tonjes had never caught a pass from Brock Purdy in a game, but he probably had the most experience playing with Brock Purdy. So the other side of that is that, well, then what does he do when he doesn't have those things? And that's what everyone's always said. And especially once you pay the guy, the argument becomes, well, can you be can you be the rising tide that lifts all the boats, right? And he made a couple of bad throws. The interception to Ricky Pearsall that he tried was just a bad decision. That you throw that, there was 4 Seahawk defenders in the area. I initially thought, from my vantage point in the press box, that Pearsall came down with it. But obviously he did not, probably didn't deserve to. But Kyle Shanahan said afterward he'd like to see Pearsall play defense and break that thing up. I still think you got to put that one more on Purdy. But the first interception, I thought Ernest Jones made a good play for one. 2, that's a throw we've seen Brock Purdy layer in to Juwan Jennings many, many times over the middle. Just the fact that he was off of his back foot, I thought was a little odd. It was just kind of like he didn't get his fundamentals on that. But then he delivers. When the game's on the line in a tough game where you don't have your guys, there's injuries, you've been kind of knocking on the door and you've been moving the ball, but you haven't been able to finish drives. He gets it done. He makes the best throw that he made all day. And I think that's the one you're referring to, the double move to Pearsall down the sideline, was right on the money. He also, I thought, did a good job of adapting on the fly once they lost Kittle. And when Jennings is gone, I think he was almost perfect targeting tight ends and running backs. And Seattle's defense wants you to do that anyway. They want you to throw underneath and then rally to the ball. But sometimes you just got to take what they give you, and he did. And so I certainly understand why people would look at the touchdown to Tungus and say he got lucky. Okay, maybe there's an element of that for sure. But there's also something to be said for trusting your guy in that situation. You gotta make a play. And so not his best game by any means, but definitely one that I think the people who keep pounding the table for Brock Purdy to lead a comeback late in the game and win a
Yeah.
game, you got to give him credit for it. You can't take it away just because you didn't like the way it looked when it happened. So it's a little bit of everything, I guess, is the long-winded way to say it,
Yeah, I
or the
think all
short-winded way of saying what I said long-windedly.
I think all in all, like nobody plays, Brock, and this is the bubble we're in. So every throw is hyper, we're hyper focused on it all. And it's fair. Like I'm not one of those people that says like, it's not end the debate. Why are we still debating it? It's
Right,
like
right,
Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson get debated. What do we like?
right,
He's not immune. Like,
right.
but I do think, and I am not, let me be very clear, because people say, like, well, you wouldn't get mad at Mahomes if he did that. It's like, yeah, well, okay, talk to me in 2 Super Bowls.
Right. You got to
But
have the pelts on the wall for that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
but I will say, I do think you reach a point where you've won enough where we don't look at your box score. We just go, did you find a way to win? And I was so aware. This is what I thought was so impressive with Brock. Watching that game through the binoculars, and I'm just, you scan, as I know you are, you're like scanning right before the snap. And I'm like, Valdez-Scantling, Gage, Tonjes, Farrell. Whoa. Like you wanted to see him do it without Debo. Like, okay, how about without anybody else that he's used to playing with other than the running back McCaffrey? And
Yep.
and to your, I thought he made some really good. He made one throw out of the red zone, out of his own end zone on maybe the opening drive to Christian that I thought was like he just did some little stuff because he can move a little bit. Now he made some. The second pick, I'm with you. Like, but
Yep.
what was he 7-7 on that last drive?
Yeah, I think 6 of 6 for 67 in the touchdown. I think.
I mean, the
Something like that,
conversion to Tonjes, Tonjes didn't have Tonjes had one career target, and it was 2 years ago.
Yep.
So
He almost ran more routes the other day than he'd run in his entire career.
It's incredible.
Think
Like
about that.
Here's my overarching. It's pretty crazy, Nick. My overarching take coming out of that game is this might kind of be how it looks this year.
Yeah.
And I thought if you had lost that game, if you're them, it would have felt like some of the games you lost last year. Like, oh, here we go again, right? Especially the Moody miss and then the block. Right. So for the flip side of that is a quarterback who's finding a way to win. Hopefully, he doesn't have to do it. At some point, I think DeMarcus Robinson's going to make an impact when he's back week 4.
For sure.
At some point, Ayuk. Christian was fantastic. You don't win that game without him. But I thought all in all, like that's kind of the game we've been looking for. A game where most things don't go right and Brock still finds a way.
I gotta say that my big takeaway was just the kind of surprise at how it played out. Because if you'd have told me it was going to be a defensive slugfest, I would have said Seattle won the game. Just because my thought has been from watching the team, and I still stand by this, even after having a game of evidence, that the offense was going to have to do a lot of the heavy lifting early in the season. Now, that was, of course, assuming that you have Kittle and you have Jennings and you're a little bit more healthy than what they are offensively right now. But Robert Saleh has been so open about, I don't know what we're going to look like. I have no idea what we're going to look like. He said last week, you put the seatbelt on, just buckle up and let's see what happens, right? And I followed that up with, Robert, you've been saying we'll see a lot this offseason. What is that like for you? And he gave a great answer about you want to believe. You've seen these guys every day. You know what they're made of, but you want to believe, but you don't know. You don't know until you know, right? And so I thought just my big takeaway in watching the game again a couple of times, I thought the defense, it wasn't great. But if you look at the numbers, it was great. And I think that's got to be exciting for the Niners because there is a lot of room for growth there. If you look at like success rate, their success rate wasn't that great for the game, but they were really good on third down, got off the field. They were good, really good in the red zone. They got 2 really timely takeaways. But, I saw a lot of people saying, well, the defensive line is, they had all these investments and they didn't get that much pressure and they didn't get that many sacks. And man, I'm watching that tape. Those guys were doing a great job of building a pocket, setting edges, and allowing D Winters and Fred Warner to just be guided missiles and do what they want. Like that, those two guys were the best players on the field. And a lot of it was because I thought the defensive line
Mm.
did a really good job of being assignment sound and eating up blockers to allow those guys to kind of run free. The cornerbacks, I thought played really well. They were excellent in the run game, which a year ago was a small I think you and I talked about this last time I was on. It was a small thing that people didn't talk about, but it was lacking. Like they didn't have those guys who were willing to stick their nose out in there as much out on the edges. And so I thought all of that was better. I definitely would not have guessed the 17-13 game would have gone the 49ers way. But to your point, if this defense can kind of build off of this as they go, and I looked at the first four games and said this game in Seattle is probably going to be the toughest of the first four, and you win it. Now maybe you can play with house money a little bit. Obviously, you still need to take care of business against the teams that you should beat, but an encouraging win for them. Obviously, they would prefer they didn't come at the injury cost that it seems to
Yeah.
have.
Yeah. I think no schedule. I think we got carried away. So, the Niners schedule is easy. And Kittle, I remember Kittle said a few weeks ago or a month ago to Richard Sherman, like, easy. This is the NFL. There's no easy. And I do agree with that. But I think this
Sure.
game was a great microcosm of you are not, and Sunday Night Football was a great, like, you're not playing Lamar Jackson. You're not playing Mahomes. You're not playing Josh Allen.
Right.
So it doesn't mean anything's going to be easy, but it just means you can play a game where guys get hurt, some self-inflicted wounds, and you're still going to have a chance to win at the end. You still got to go do it, but you're going to have that chance. And that to me was that's my big season take after watching week one. It's just like you play a clean game, you're going to win by 10. You don't,
Yeah.
maybe you still got a shot.
It was interesting after the game, guy. I was talking to Jason Pinnock in the locker room, and I said something about like kind of a roller coaster for your first game as a 49er, and he chuckled and he said, "Man, my whole life has been roller coasters. My whole career has been roller
Yeah.
coasters. This is what I'm used to." But we were talking about kind of the young guys, and I asked him about like how much nerves he thought some of those young guys had on defense going into the game, and he said he lives by this quote, and I really liked it, so I just wanted to kind of get it in there. But he said, trust is trust is earned by the drop and lost by the bucket. And basically his point was that all these young defensive guys can't be worried about the big picture of like, oh, am I going to go in and do this right? You got to just do it one play at a time. You earn that trust by the drop, and eventually everyone believes in you and you have that trust. So I thought, at least in this game, there was a lot of guys that you could look at, some younger guys, and say, okay, they're starting to earn that. I look at Marquise Siegel, like this is a guy who came in and did a really nice job. He was under control. He wasn't overrunning plays. He was making tackles in the open field. All the things that you would hope to see. So a long way to go, certainly for the 49ers, and not perfect by any means. But I think the thing that they have to be most excited about is that they won a game, to your point from earlier, a game they probably wouldn't have won last year, but a game that they won where there's still a lot of things that they can tangibly clean up. It's not just like, oh, we've got to be better. It's like, no, there's like, you make a 27-yard field goal. Like that's a cut and dry thing, right? So, and I'm sure we can get into that specifically, but yeah, that was kind of my big takeaway here is a game that the 49ers definitely don't win last year, but won while knowing there are a lot of things to clean up that they actually are capable of cleaning up.
It seems like you have some unique insight on this just from what I saw you. I don't know if this was, I don't know if you wrote this. I think you might have tweeted this. Kyle Juszczyk kind of picking up the tight end load. We even saw him line up. It felt to me, I haven't checked the stats, but it felt to me like he lined up attached on the offensive line a little more than usual. So if it sounds like we're not going to see George Kittle for at least a couple of weeks, is what it sounds like. What's going on there? It sounds like there's a change to the Niners, the way they use Kyle Juszczyk this year.
So basically what happened was during training camp, I was chatting with Kyle Juszczyk about a couple of stories that I was working on. And he kind of brought up unprompted, like, because I was asking him just about like interactions with some of the young guys and, if he's taking a bigger role in leadership and that kind of stuff. And he kind of unprompted brought up like, yeah, I've been attending tight end meetings about half the time. And what the realization was is basically like at this point from the run game perspective, he knows the run game from the fullback spot, but basically that the line between fullback and tight end in their offense has blurred enough that it makes sense for him to be in the tight end meeting room about half the time. And so that's why you are seeing a little bit more of that where he's attached to the line. And it's why, even if you want to go the other way with it during the preseason, you'd see Jake Tonjes playing fullback a little bit, right? So it kind of goes both ways when you're looking at it that way. And so I know Kyle Shanahan was asked yesterday about Braden Willis being an option, and maybe that is something that they will do. And they don't necessarily have to promote him full time to the active roster. They can do the call ups from the practice squad for a few weeks if they want. But if they don't want to go that way, I could see a scenario in which Juszczyk is getting used that way. And remember, Juszczyk, if you go all the way back, coming out of Harvard, was a tight end. Like that was what he did. So he's got some familiarity there. I don't know that they would necessarily attach him to the line and have him play the run blocking role that you do with a Luke Farrell or even a George Kittle. But there is that positional versatility. I wrote a story a couple years ago talking to Kyle Juszczyk, and the takeaway was, if you want to play fullback in the NFL, the key to playing fullback is to not play fullback. Like you have to be able to do a bunch of other stuff to do that, which is why you see Juszczyk like fielding punts and kickoffs and all that kind of stuff during practice. And so that's how he has carved out such a career for himself. So it will be interesting to see. And again, to the earlier point, I would think Brock Purdy would be in favor of it because it is at least somebody that he's worked with for a long time, which as of right now, those are very few and far between in terms of healthy guys on the roster.
Well, yeah, you could wonder, and we'll finish on this, like Brock might just throw to people he trusts, which is what happened last week, right? Like, and we're all fired up. Oh, Kendrick Bourne. Well, Brock hasn't thrown a pass to Kendrick Bourne.
Never.
So he might as well be Marquez Valdez-Scantling's brother. I mean, like,
yeah. You know who has thrown passes to Kendrick Bourne, though?
Mac Jones.
Mac Jones. That's right.
That's a good call right there.
They got the Patriots ties. But
great call.
Yeah. So it is. I mean, and that's the thing. Kendrick Bourne, I don't think anyone expects him to come in and be a savior, but having some experience, having a guy who knows what he's supposed to do, what Kyle Shanahan expects of him, it makes all the sense in the world to do that and give him an opportunity. But yeah, the receiver situation, we knew it was going to probably be this way. Certainly beyond Pearsall and Jennings, you hoped Jennings wouldn't have any issues. And maybe Kyle Shanahan said yesterday, maybe Jennings does play this week. But the hope is from their standpoint, that they can get those guys back, just kind of keep their heads above water. Losing Kittle is probably the worst guy they could lose, at least for this first part of the season, first 3 or 4 weeks. But like you said, you get Demarcus Robinson back, you feel better. Then Ayuk is closer, and all those things fall into place. But the defense, they're going to have to lean on a little bit more, I think, than they were hoping to, at least here in this early part of the season. But as Robert Saleh said it best, buckle up. We'll see how it goes.
I love this. Get strapped. All right, Nick. Great seeing you, bro. Thanks, man.
You got it, man. Talk to you later.